So let's review user administration. So for an administrator navigating from home, you're going to click the gear wheel next to the search bar, and then you'll click Users and System Administration. So when you first enter this admin side, the first thing you're going to see is this service usage section. So let's start here. So service usage. So this is where you can check your usage, update your license, and then add more users. So to the right, you can get a quote or purchase Kintone Professional, Kintone Guest Users, extra data, and client certificate authentication. So you can also view your current limitations set within Kintone and then where you currently fall. So if you click payment details down here on the bottom, you can see your 5 most recent transactions. But to view a list of all your transaction history, you'll have to log into the Kintone store at store.kintone.com. So next, let's head over to departments and users. So first, we're going to focus on this department section to the left. So departments allow you to separate your users out by their specific department. So this makes it super easy when you set up app permissions, process management, notifications, or if you need to mention them in comments on threads. So instead of including each individual person, you can just add in that entire department for those settings or for that message. So to create a new department, you just click here. And then to create a child department, you can click on the root department and click new, and then it'll populate that parent department right there. So if you hover over the specific department and hover over that gear wheel, you'll notice the department settings. So edit allows you to change the name, localized name, department code, whether or not it has a parent department, and then also the description. So these are going to be the settings that we just saw when we created that new department. You can also add the child department from right here. So that's the sub-department under this root. You can change your members. This allows you to add and delete the members of the department. You can reorder the list of departments. Here you can add or delete the department administrators. So these department administrators are going to only have access to this department and users section of administration, but it allows them to manage their users' profiles within that department. And then lastly, you can delete the department. So unassigned users right here are those who currently don't belong to a department. And then here you can see all the users that you have in the platform. So next we'll go over to the right and take a look at this user section. So this is anything dealing with the individual users of the platform. So here you can add a new user, you can change profile settings, and then you can search for a specific user here with the search bar. So let's take a look at profile settings first. So you can set whether to allow users to edit certain details on their profile. So for example, this employee ID, you most likely would want to deny changes since that's something that will always be the same for that person while they're in your company. And then at the bottom, you can also add up to 50 custom fields. So they can either be a user selection field or a text field. And you can also choose the visibility, whether or not it's public on their Kintone profile, and then also whether they can edit it or not. So notice here, I have this manager field. So notice it's a user selection field where people can see this if they view another user's profile, Kintone profile. And then that user is unable to edit this field. So now we'll go back over to the users. So by clicking the pencil icon next to the user's name, you can edit their profile. So when you're creating that person's profile, there's only 2 required fields. So that's display name. So this is the name that's going to display in Kintone. And then also the login name. So this is what they're going to use when they log into Kintone. So for this login name, I strongly recommend making this their email address, as that's going to be easiest to remember. And also please note that the login names are case sensitive. So if you do that email address, just make sure it's all lowercase. And then next we have email address right here. So this is only going to be required if you want to set up email notifications. So it's also going to show up in the user's profile, so other users have quick access to their colleagues' contact information. And we hop up over here to the right, you can see status. So this is going to show whether they're active or inactive. So if they're active, then they can log into Kintone and use it as normal. If they're inactive, then they can't log into Kintone. So we recommend any employee that leaves your company, mark them as inactive. And then we have available services. So if there's a check, then they have access to that. And if it's unchecked, then they don't. So this is for the Kintone service. And then if you've purchased client certificate authentication, that will also pop up here. And you can also manage this in services and users, which we'll go over in the next section. Here you can also assign a user a department here. So a user can also be part of more than one department, so it's important to note their priority department. And then once you select that department here, you can assign them a job title. So we'll get more into how to set up those job titles in a couple sections. And then you can set up a phone number and then a URL. And then if we scroll down here, we do have some other optional fields. And if you notice all the way down at the bottom, this is where those extra fields that we created in those profile settings are going to live. So to change the password of your user, you can click Change Password on the top right. You can generate the password automatically or enter one manually. And then when you're all set, you can choose to just save the password and let them know verbally what the new password is, or you can save it and send it via email. So when you first create a user, you're going to automatically be prompted to make that new password for them. So it's really easy when you first set up that new user. So now let's go over to, well, you'll save that before. So we'll save that. And then let's go to services and users. So here's where you can manage your services. So this is used to assign or remove the Kintone service or client certificate authentication to users if you have that added to your subdomain. So we'll select Kintone. So if you remove someone from the Kintone service here, they're not going to be able to log, or they'll be able to log into Kintone, but they're not going to be able to access the platform. So when they log in, if they don't have the service, they're going to log in. They'll see that initial blue page that you see, that you notice the Kintone button on the left. That just won't be available to them if the Kintone service is unavailable. And then also just want to note again, if somebody leaves the company, it is best to mark their user profile as inactive instead of disabling their Kintone service. So next, let's go down to job titles. So this allows you to select a job title after determining the department. So in the user's profile, like we saw a little bit ago, that's where you can assign somebody that job title. So you can add a new job title here and reorder them. So when you reorder them, that is the order that they're going to appear when you select the user profile in the user profile. So for those users who don't already have one set, this is the order that you're going to see when you're selecting that. So to create the new title, you'll just click New, add the name, and then there's an optional description. And then you'll save that when you're all set. And then to delete, you'll just open up that job title and click Delete this job title over on the right. So job titles are also going to be useful when we get into these dynamic groups and roles in this next section. So let's hop down to there. So groups or roles, so this is more dynamic than departments. So people can be added to a group or role if they meet a certain criteria. You can also use groups and roles kind of the same way where you use departments in mentioning process management, notifications, and permissions. So another cool thing about the groups and roles is it allows you to include people from the different departments into a single group. So to add in a new group, you'll just click New, and then you'll enter the name. You're going to choose whether you want it to be static, which is where you're going to manually add those members, or dynamic, which is where you set criteria to have those members automatically added to the role or group, and then the optional description. And then save when you're all set with that. And then if you roll over the gear wheel for a static group, you can see some settings for that. So edit allows you to change the name, group code, or description. But just note, if it's static, you cannot change it to dynamic. And if it's set as dynamic initially, you cannot change that back to static. You can also change your group members, which this is a static group, so those you will manually be adding. So that's what that looks like for that static group. You manually add your users and then save when you're all set. And then you can also reorder these, and then lastly, you can delete that group or role. So when you roll over the gear wheel for a dynamic group, you can edit just like the same. You change that name, group code, or description, but you can't change it to static if it's dynamic. Next, we have edit membership conditions. So this is where you're going to set those conditions that they need to meet in order to be in this group. And then you can also reorder here and delete. So let's check out these membership conditions. So here, the only people in this VP's role, we'll call this one a role. So people are automatically enrolled into this VP's role when their job title in their user profile includes any of vice president. So if you notice in my job titles, I had these are the job titles that I created myself. And then in the person's user profile, I gave them this specific job title. So this is going to automatically add anybody to this role that has that vice president job title. And then also from here, you can go directly into the user's profile by clicking the little pencil icon next to their name. Just makes it super easy if you need to add that, add in that job title. And then just the last, one more thing to note is that you're always going to have these groups, administrators, and everyone. So these are, default groups you cannot delete. So we'll go over administrators in a couple sections, but the everyone group is just a group that includes every single user of the platform. So just a note, it could be a little confusing, the difference between departments, groups, and roles. So when starting out with these, you're going to want to start by creating your departments, and then you'll want to build off of your departments as needed with these groups or roles. So for example, this party planning committee, this is most likely going to include people who aren't really related within departments or even within job titles. So you'll want to create this static group for this party planning committee. And then VPs, they could be from many different departments. So this is going to be a role where they're just kind of connected by that job title. So that's kind of how you want to think about it. Start with your departments and then create your groups and roles based off those extra needs besides what you have for those specific departments set up. So next we'll go to bulk actions. So here you can bulk import, export, and delete users. So this is going to be very useful when you have lots of users to manage within Kintone. So here you can import from a file. So this makes it easier if you need to add a lot of those users at once instead of adding them in individually. And then we have export to file. So this is just exporting all that user information. So you can also export users available service, departments, membership, job titles, groups or roles, and user groups or role membership. So you can specify those contents that you want exported. And then if you need to bulk delete any users, you can come to delete users, highlight their name, and then add them over here to users to be deleted. And then once you're positive that you have the people over there that you want deleted, you'll go ahead and click delete. Now, when people leave the company, highly recommend just making their user profile inactive instead of completely deleting them. So there are repercussions when you do delete users. So just one thing to note. If you do make those users inactive, that will free up your user seat. So it's not going to waste any of the user seats that you've purchased. So next we'll go down to administrators. So administrators are going to have all the permissions in the platform. So here's where you can add and remove admins. So just like I showed you in the last one, you'll just click their name and then add them over here to the right. under administrators, and then save. And if you need to remove them, highlight their name, remove, and then you'll save. So just a tip, it's never a bad idea to have more than one administrator. So it's going to make life a lot easier if you get locked out, or if your users ever have issues getting into Kintone and you happen to be unreachable. And then also, if an admin leaves the company, it's just always a good idea to have more than one administrator noted in here in Kintone. And then lastly, we have department access control. So the department access control feature, it enables administrators to limit users across access across different departments. So if enabled, information of users in departments is only going to be visible by users in the same top level department. So when this is enabled, users from one top level department, they're unable to message or view the profiles of users from other top level departments. So I had that customer success department and I had a sales department. So if this department access control was on, the users in those different departments wouldn't be able to see or interact with each other. So the users in different top level departments, they aren't displayed in search results and they cannot be specified as recipients of the app mentions and comments. So if there is a record where a user from a different top level department has like a comment there, it's going to show as user not visible rather than their actual display name. But users within the same top level department, they will still be able to view each other's profiles, message each other, search for users and app mentioned. And that's regardless of the child departments, locations, or groups or roles. So department access control is just based on those departments that you have set up. And then one thing to note, if you do enable this department access control, those administrators, they're still going to be able to view all the users' platforms. So it's just going to be that limitation of seeing users between different departments. All right, and that concludes our training on user administration.